Hello again.
Okay, it is 2 o'clock. Debbie, are we ready in the back? We are. Okay, colleagues, ready in the front? All right. Well, we will open this board briefing at 2 o'clock, and we've got 3 topics on our list today. Jumping off with the code compliance ordinance amendments, and I see Sarah has come to the front of the room to
Thank you.
lead us in this conversation.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and grab a pen here. I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I was helping at the counter.
Oh,
I know, right? Okay, so I'll just start talking. I'll find a pen and ink. Okay, so I know.
I got
Oh,
another
good.
pen over here. Would you like one? I could throw it to you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I got it right here.
Because I was just recently on the phone with someone who said, I'm just pulling up to DCD. I'm going in there. I hope I'm going to talk to Sarah.
They did.
I caught you. Is your microphone on, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And they did. They did. I was helping someone else and their timing was perfect. And it was good. It was a good conversation.
Good.
Okay, so code enforcement status update. Couple of things. So I have a couple of preliminary asks, kind of checkpoints today. As we have worked through the buyout, the lawsuit was filed 2 days ago. So I think there's going to be two. The first of those two was done. My deposition was done. Bill looked at it, got that checked off the list, got the STR cap BART order, thank you very much, done today. So there is space that is freeing up where I can, in a more structured way, refocus my time on some of these other equally important things we're working on. And one of them is code enforcement. So I do anticipate coming back routinely moving forward to really start gelling some of those proposals for those updates. So a couple of things today. There's some decisions that are going to have to be made. And I've had a conversation with Commissioner Fournier that I'm going to dive into after this, but just the overall landscape of these updates. I have worked with council on an ordinance draft. It is not perfect. It is not done. There are things that need to be filled into it. But we have a good framework started. There are departments beyond community development that are interested in being included in this program. Those include public works for road approaches, encroachments in road right-of-ways, etc. Solid waste is a big one. We all hear about the solid waste complaints, the trash, etc. Community health, pulling in the health department. There's been a request that we consider the canine program for dog retrieval. So it's morphed and expanded into something that is bigger that we all need. The question is, how big should it be? And what is appropriate to be enforced through this program? And what should have its own program? What is the role of Public Works? What is the role of the Sheriff's Office? What is the role of the Health Department? What does the board want to see? So my first step is to start really compartmentalizing and organizing all of that, and at some point come back and say, this is what everybody wants, this is what we can do, etc. The other pieces of that, the cities for properties in urban growth boundaries want us to do their enforcement. Community development historically has been the dumping ground and the hammer. The hopeful hammer is what I call us, for other departments and cities to take care of things that they want us to take care of that they don't have the capacity or ability to do so. And there are, without an ordinance in place that gives community development that authority, I will not do regulatory overreach, just to be frank about that. So part of it is, what does our relationship with the cities in their urban growth boundaries look like? Because they're all asking and they're all wanting. With that, we have urban unincorporated communities in Tillamook County. We have rural areas, we have industrial lands, we have farms. We've received a lot of feedback about we'd like to see a noise ordinance. We want a nuisance ordinance that talks about garbage, not just solid waste, but garbage, or somebody's yard looks terrible. They haven't mowed in forever. It might be a fire hazard. How far do we want to go? And what is appropriate to enforce? And I'm thinking of noise and lighting in a community versus a farm where those are part of their activities. That is part of their farm operation. They're going to have those brighter lights. Those tractors start at 4 a.m., right? So kind of piecing it out in terms of would it be appropriate in our enforcement ordinance and code compliance measures to talk about compliance and things like nuisance ordinances for unincorporated communities, but not for our farm and forest and rural lands, where these are activities that are expected to generate certain types of nuisances that communities may not want, but we don't want to do enforcement on a farmer for starting his tractor, right? So we have 75 linear miles of coastline. We have urban growth boundaries, we have unincorporated communities, and we have rural areas. I would like to come back with a proposal that I think best compartmentalizes and captures what I think the needs are and what is appropriate for each of these areas, because they're all very diverse. The other piece of that conversation is capacity. We talk about the sheriff's office. We have a draft position description for a code compliance officer. Also like to look at what can we realistically do? Because we could bring forward the best ordinance for the commissioners to adopt. But if we don't have the people and the resources behind it, we will fail. So the other piece of that is a reality check.
So Sarah, can I stop you for just
Yeah.
a second? All of this sounds fantastic, and I think I want to I know we've got Mike on board as well. Sort of a point of order that we've talked about, right? Is it feels like this would be a central services legal conversation potentially, because it's the hearings officer and it's about how different departments will access this particular shared resource of the hearings office. Potentially a place where the executive team would be really valuable, because you're talking about engaging with the sheriff's office. You have Under Sheriff Kelly on that team. You're talking about solid waste. We have
Justin.
parks. So
Parks.
we have some on the team, some not on the team. So as I hear you describe this, and my brain is going, this is central services, legal enforcement, a service that everyone would use. So, and then I guess I stopped to just reflect to say, how much more do we as commissioners need to make this,
Can I add one
Yeah.
more piece to that?
Yeah.
Because I'm following you. So the last piece of that is Commissioner Fournier and I have had some pretty in-depth conversations about compliance enforcement philosophies over the last couple of days. Whatever the process would be, is it would be designed. My proposal is, with his background, he is one of the liaisons to some of these departments. It also gives him an incredible opportunity to really dive into, to better understand and become familiar with a lot of the programs that the two of you have had a few years to familiarize yourselves with. If I had a commissioner working on this through whatever process is unfolding, I would love to have Commissioner Fournier be my point person to help me work through this.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, so it sounds like I hadn't thought about this for central services, but initially when we've had discussions, but as she's talking about how broad it's getting, I could see it morphing into that. And as complex and, or multifaceted as it has the potential to be, I could see having input from other county staff through that executive team, which you're on, could be beneficial. I'm hearing you say, I think what you're looking for from the board today is you're just sharing an update, a brief
Right.
update, and you're looking for just a continual
That's
thumbs
right.
up that this is the direction we're going, which we're adding to, and maybe I think it's appropriate for Paul to be on board with this
Mhm.
larger work group, I guess.
Yeah,
Because of that external connection to the community. Maybe we balance more internal discussions without Commissioner Paul at the start to kind of fine tune, but we can talk through that, just trying to kind of honor the new structure, but we can work through that. So yeah, I think I hear you know where you want to go, and you just need to have some more time to put some things on paper and have some targeted questions, and then have others weigh in on it. And
right. Because the reality check is going to be the biggest piece of this. What can we do? What can we legally do? What do we have the resources to do? And what is appropriate to be in this program? Because what there might be are several enforcement or compliance programs that maybe are not all under community development. Because for me, I do see public works because of the nexus with all the construction projects and land use. I do see solid waste. I do see community health because of all of the licensing. And so, like, what should it be? And those things that don't belong in that program specifically, how else do we address them? So I think we need to dump, sort, organize. And so having, I've talked to Chris, I did talk to Matt Kelly today and a couple others, and just say, following this meeting today, 2 things I would like your permission to do: the dump, sort, and organize with my department peers, and then engage Commissioner Fournier in those efforts and come back.
One of the things, Rachel, is I think this might, when she started talking about this, I think it might be a good thing for social services.
that's what I'm hearing.
And
too,
so,
yeah.
and also the reason why is a lot of times I think this has been held up before because of trying to include law enforcement, and that's just doesn't need to be a component of this, and I think that's why it keeps coming to a stop. And so I think we can help. I can help navigate that because I understand why that is, and I kind of know why that is, and I think every one of these departments is going to benefit. So it's a perfect fit for us. I thought, facility. We talked about the parking thing. Like this is one of those things though that like bringing in the dog, even the dog catcher, which is like the biggest hurdle we have. I wish we had an easy solution to that. I was going to try to convince Nick.
Let the city take it.
And
Anyway.
I do have a job description for a code compliance officer. So if this is something we're serious on with union negotiations coming up, and this would be a new position, the other piece of that is, where does that fall into this with bargaining? And is this the right time to bring that non-deputized position forward? Like, so that would be the other thing. That's ask number 3. And ask number 4 is, the communities really want to be a part of these ordinance amendment updates. So what is the role of the CACs, and would you like me to engage with them? My thought is, we write it, we go and get feedback from them after because of all the logistics and the legalities of it.
So
But the working group would be department heads with Rachel and our legal team.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to get too far. I think there's a lot of work ahead of us, and I think by the time we get to, so I hear you have a draft ordinance, but by the time we get to one that reflects the changes that you just described,
It's big.
I don't see this aligning with bargaining. It seems like it would be a position that comes later. But I think we just go through the process in the natural course of how it needs to go. And if once we get to the point of the person and the job description, then we can figure out how that aligns with bargaining or not.
Okay.
'Cause it may come in toward the end, potentially. I mean, we
Right.
have several months still, so.
Yeah, and we left the description of the position. I mean, it's descriptive enough, but it has space for other programs or taking programs out. Because again, all of the enforcement and compliance programs that we have, when you look at every department, becomes quite expansive.
Yeah, and that's the stuff we can dive in at the work group.
That's right. Yes.
yeah.
So I
yeah.
think you're on a good path, and we can pull a larger group together. And if you want to,
Chris had his hand up. I see he put his hand down. Chris, did you have something you wanted to share?
No, my answer or my question was resolved. Because we're going through all of our troop job descriptions, and in that, while we have troop engaged in this, it'd be a good thing to go through that process. But the job description is later on, I learned, is not to that point. So bringing troop in now would be a little premature. So that answered my question. I just want to take advantage of troop while we had them under contract.
Well, and we do have another contract, if I'm not mistaken, Rachel, to continue to work with Troop as we have additional changes and things that
Yeah,
happen. right?
yeah, there's gonna be positions that come up and we need to put them in front of troop, so that won't ever go away. Or
Thanks.
the need won't go away.
And then Commissioner Sky, I would say at some point, I need to circle back around to Marlene and Jamie, because that is the department that I feel like I've not had enough time with to really pull together and better assess their needs. We've had some conversations with them. There were some homework and tasks, and I need to follow back up with them on those.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I know that they are interested in being a part of this, which is again, part of why it ends up for me feeling like, oh, this is one of those countywide kind of things that multiple departments want to be able to access, and it doesn't necessarily make sense for it to land solely in community development, because not everything that we're talking about really relates back to that. So, Bill, you have tried a
I was
couple
just-
times to flag me.
I was just saying, we put together a draft, 6 or 8 months ago, and it involves all county ordinances and some DEQ stuff. And it could be expanded from there, but was the starting point. And I agree that the environmental health department, Jamie, is oftentimes really struggling with trying to gain compliance, and we've been maybe not the most responsive to her because, Paul, the sheriff, has sent people out before to kind of help people out, but she needs to be brought into that. But the structure is basically the same. They get a citation, have a right to appeal, but the hearings officer, the one that you put to work today or possibly put to work, or another one would do the hearings rather than going through justice court where it's just the court system get more hung up, and you could fine them and declare them a nuisance and make them clean it up.
It's cleaner because it's a civil process rather than a criminal.
Right.
There's no criminal,
So,
And
so
the
anyway,
hearings officer
the
has
bare
to-
bones is there.
Yeah.
The ordinance, the bare
Yeah.
bones is there to sort of fill it in, and, it's not like we reinvented the wheel. It's, what other counties, I think most other counties do.
So if I think about process, really, and Rachel, help guide me, and if I'm not getting it right, Mike's on there, he can help us as well. But the commissioner's role in this today would be to say, yes, we think this is a worthy project. Yes, we think that we should have senior staff and CAO applying time to do this. Please go forward and start this groundwork piece of it, which Sarah, you've already done quite a bit of, but continuing that and engaging with the CAO and the executive team to do so.
Well said. And typically what would come back before you next is a draft ordinance, kind of like we've done with the TLT, and start batting it around. Or if there's really, if we're maybe an impasse on the team coming to you for a one-off direction on how to proceed. But yeah, also I was thinking one thing that, because this is likely to be next fiscal year, one thing we are going to have to be premature about is budgeting for next year.
Right.
We are going to have to at least get something in those early submittals, which are coming in a month, I'm sure. So we'll have to try to put something around this, even though it's not going to be accurate to get it in the budget. But we'll work through that.
And then Paul's role. So is that something, will he engage in that as well?
I see, and I think we can talk more about this offline, but I see Paul definitely being engaged. I think I see him providing more input from the law enforcement piece, and
I'm fine
and that-
not being directly involved in that part of it.
yeah, I'm hearing he's going to you're probably connecting directly with him on specific questions, and then further down the road when it comes time to outreach, I could see you being a nexus to the community for that with the ordinance adoption.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That works for me.
Commissioner Bell, you've been very quiet. Any thoughts?
I am grateful that you're moving forward with this. I certainly see the need, and yes, multiple departments need it. So it's interesting to see it bubbling along and try to imagine where it lands. I hadn't thought about it being part of legal services. That's interesting.
Central services.
I said legal, but
Oh,
central.
okay.
But yeah, I was thinking of it, kind of
Yeah, so that's interesting. And yeah, I think we're in the right place, which is exploratory.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Do you need anything else from us for this topic?
Thank you for your clear direction. Mike, how did we do? This was a little
Yeah, how
different
did you
take on a conversation.
He's not answering.
Is it Mike? Do you hear us?
You
we asked
muted.
for a
I'm
little
sorry.
feedback there. How was our process? Did we get it right?
Well, actually, very, very good. I was watching this and saying, when we do our next session, that this would be a perfect kind of one to bring forward and talk about the details. Fundamentally, you did very well.
Okay, good. We like immediate feedback, right? Yeah, right. Gold star immediate validation. Okay, thank you. Okay, and Sarah, thank you for being here on that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
She's sticking
I
around.
think
for
I'm
the
still,
next one.
I,
You're here for TLT
I
also.
am.
Lucky you.
yes,
Lucky
yes,
okay, TLT.
ready to go.
Lead us into this.
Okay, your specific items for today, approving this is the final draft, because from here, it's gonna be posted, it's gonna be noticed, et cetera. The timeline, and I've sent an updated timeline with, the dates that Sarah and Commissioner Bell have been working on for the stakeholder meetings. So affirming that looks good. And then I think I'm hoping those will be quick conversations. And then after that, what's the next step of this? Who's doing what? Do we need a pack? Let's talk about those next steps, because we're on a very tight timeline to start moving forward with some of that. But let's start with the draft. So the draft hasn't changed for a couple of weeks, hasn't changed since the last board briefing. I don't know if you want to review it again, if you had any other outstanding questions.
It felt like we did finalize, or we provided slightly different wording under revenues allocated under subsection B. We added the second sentence, subsection C is not intended to preclude additional general fund revenues from being allocated as available. So that was just fine. I don't think we had that wording last time we looked, right? We had the.
Yeah, it was at the last board briefing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking that was.
It's the newest language
Yeah.
update, but
I do not have any questions on the draft. I think,
and it may
Others?
continue to tweak over the hearings, and I think that's to be expected with this one, but yeah. Well.
Yep.
Okay. Sarah, did you have anything on the draft?
No, thank you.
Okay, the timeline. So out of last board briefing, we spent some time reviewing my proposed timeline, the worst case final deadlines timeline, and landed somewhere in the middle. And so the board preferred timeline is what you have before you, with the adoption timeline. The election timelines are what those are. And then the January 16th and January 18th TLT provider and property manager meetings. So my understanding as of this morning is Commissioner Bell's working on drafting an invitation letter, because it was going to come from you, and that DCD is ready to send that mailing out when it's ready. And so that would put those in people's box. It's a physical mailing mid next week, so a few days before the 16th and 18th.
When can we send it out?
We have everything as soon as we get your letter, we're
Great,
ready.
okay, like
Yeah.
tomorrow? Good.
Tomorrow, well, it's 2,000 mailings, so it'll be tomorrow and Friday.
Yeah.
Yep.
because
And then the
of
email
course.
blast will happen, that 500 email database immediately.
Yeah, because of course the 16th, I think, is next Thursday.
Thursday,
So
So if we get it out tomorrow and Friday, people will at least have a few days.
couple of days.
Okay, good. And I was thinking about those meetings today and wondering who is noticing them.
So our meetings or the hearings?
The meetings, the 16th and the 18th.
That's what your letter is.
No, I meant public notice.
If it's just you, do we need to do public notice?
So we haven't got that far.
Okay.
So it depends on if it needs to be a public. So I don't know. I don't think we've talked about if all three commissioners are going to be there. I haven't heard anything about the format of the meeting. So that's part of the discussion today, is to flesh this out. But if all three of you are going to be there, yes, it would be noticed. And I would actually maybe even argue that because of your recent recommendation of substantive information coming before the board at a later date, that even if it was Commissioner Bell, it should be a notice meeting?
I'm not sure. I mean, she did it, you'd be the only one doing it, Mary Faith.
Well, Paul is interested, and I think it'd be great. I think if these folks who come know that all of us are paying attention, I'm not locking you into
I'm
anything,
out of,
but Paul,
I'm out of town on the
Yeah,
18th,
yeah,
but
Paul had indicated an interest, so I think it would be great if we go.
it's really making, it's my
So let's just plan on noticing them. Yeah, okay. So the public notice would be in the board agenda announcements, so there's nothing for you to do there.
Nothing for me to do there. Okay.
And you've secured the cortisone, okay?
Yes, all done. And I will send Rachel the invoice for that when we get it.
Send it to Isabel.
Isabel, I'll send it to Isabel.
Why not? I just looked at those dates. I think that's the day I'm down at the Commissioner College.
It is, because that was the day Ray Monroe was looking for. You're gone.
That's why the date just rang with me. 16th is the one I couldn't do.
Right, okay,
So,
all right. Well,
so it might just-
18th if you want.
And if it's
That's a
possible, I will attend the
I'll be down
16th.
there Saturday because it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Oh, okay, okay,
So you're solo.
okay.
Well, if it's those dates, and then I can,
Okay, well, we don't necessarily have to notice it then unless you know you can come.
I would have to look at my calendar for sure, the afternoon of or the evening of the 16th. I can't remember.
Okay. So the format of those groups is really just for me to present to them what's in the ordinance, to say, this is what we're thinking, this is our idea, this is where we're going. And to invite them to give public comment, invite them to give feedback in the letter, which I should have done before the end of the day. And then I would be grateful if folks just look it over, just because it's always good to have a couple more eyes on it in our office, and then send it to Sarah tomorrow morning. I'm telling people, they're just the things we've been talking about. Here's what we're thinking. Here's why we're thinking. These are the opportunities. I'm inviting them to, if the voters pass this, we would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts about how we should invest the 70%? Because this is really exciting, and, et cetera. So the intention is just to engage people in that industry and hear them out, let them hear us. And invite them to the public hearings, the ordinance hearings, and hopefully people don't. What I'm hoping to prevent is for people to say, "How come I didn't know anything about this?" Start the conversation and give people some information.
Will you have, are you going to have a handout or a visual presentation or?
Well, yes to handouts, and I don't know to a PowerPoint.
Okay.
I don't know that it'd be helpful.
if it's a virtual option, I should be able to do the one on the 6th. I can be there on the 16th. Yeah, so I can do virtual for that.
Okay, there's virtual of both.
Yeah, I'm not sure the time of the class on the 18th, but I think it's over in the afternoon.
Okay, great.
Do they go into the evening, those classes? Or the end?
No,
I didn't get to go in
Down
person.
in-
I don't know.
usually do in the
Well,
afternoon.
we'll figure it out, but if I'm available, I'll be
Dinner.
happy to.
You might have to skip the dinner and happy hour, but
That's the most
It's
important part.
virtual, my
Nobody
camera
tells
won't be
me.
working.
So speaking of the 16th, off the subject, that if here, are we still meeting with Mike? We had a workshop on the 16th.
Yeah.
oh,
I saw that too.
Oh,
yeah, that was scheduled when you didn't have county college on your,
Yep.
no, we will have to reschedule that.
Okay.
Mike, did you hear that? We have to reschedule the next training on the 16th, so Isabella, and
Okay.
Debbie will be in touch about that. You got that, Debbie? Thank you.
Okay. I'm very grateful to Sarah for stepping in and helping out, helping invite short-term rental and lodging owners and operators. So hopefully between the two meetings before the hearings, people will have a chance to attend one or the other if they're interested. They can come in person, they can come remotely, they can send us public comments, and then of course they can always come to the hearings.
Right. No, you're welcome. Happy to help. I think that's the thing too, is that even though our timeline for notice of these listening sessions, these meetings are tight, I think maybe what's, in my opinion, more important is they know when your hearings are happening. You've made an effort to reach out to them intentionally to say, we're having hearings to discuss this, and your, input and participation in those hearings is welcome.
And the email will go out tomorrow then.
Soon as we get the letter, Tommy has the email distribution list ready. It is not all of the owners of the lodging facilities. What it is the email distribution list are the people that file and pay, which is not always the owner. So between the two, we'll catch everybody.
And so maybe text of the email that encourages those who file and pay to notify the owners to be looking for the letter, again, just to give people as much time as we can, kind of as a heads up for that meeting on the 16th and the 18th. So if we encourage an email.
Can
And
you also put something on, maybe on your website?
So, and what we'll do is, because we can use, well, so I guess here's the other question for the meetings. So I offered to help her run those, Commissioner Bell run those.
And should those be on our website? Because I want to be really clear at this point, we're kind of blending
That's right.
community development leading this and the commissioners leading this. And I think I don't know, maybe Sarah, you could speak to this. My concern would be, I don't think that we want community development to be the face of the increase to the transient lodging tax. I think that needs to come as an ordinance from the commissioners, and it's going to be a pack, and we're going to be the ones talking about it. And so I don't know if we want to just kind of lead with everything coming from our office, it being on our webpage. You could have something that leads to our webpage maybe, but just trying to frame it properly.
I appreciate that, and my staff appreciate that, because as you can imagine, we are accustomed to being in the hot seat, but it's not always preferred.
Right.
So the plan was to have Tommy send the email out just simply to say, please see attached invite from Commissioner Mary Faith Bell. Any questions, please contact the Commissioner's office. We could share the email distribution list with Debbie or whomever if you feel that that email should also come from the Commissioner's office. The other thing is, I'm happy to run the virtual portion of the meeting for Commissioner Bell. And use a link from our DCD account for Teams to do that hybrid. We can put it on our page, we can put it on your page, we can put it on both. But just to your point, I guess, yeah, how would you like to separate and share these things? Because I'm happy to do the legwork, happy to do the work, but whose face should be on it?
Yeah, I agree, especially if it's coming from Commissioner Bell. I was just thinking of the connection to the lodging providers initially, but it does make sense. I think given the amount of traffic this is going to have, we should probably just create a new page within the BOC website or on the ordinance page or something like that. So I can work on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if I am there and I am running the virtual meetings, I don't know if you want to have Debbie or Isabel or somebody from your office do that. I'm happy to do that. Do you want me to put together, I can do the meeting link and like download the meetings and send them to you, or I can do the platform, but I don't know what you prefer.
I think this is the stuff we need to talk about offline. So in hindsight, we should bring a more fully developed recommendation on how to run the meeting to you. So we will do that offline.
Okay. So TBD.
I agree. I don't want to dump a bunch of stuff unnecessarily on Sarah, and I really don't want your staff to get a bunch of negative feedback for our initiative. And I'm super grateful because you are the person with the relationships with this group and the experience with this group. And so I think if there's a way that we can affect, like, you're introducing me to them,
Right.
It's a warm handoff. I think
Yeah.
that will be ideal.
Okay, yeah. And what I did communicate with my staff in preparation for the briefing today was we will start getting calls, especially if the notice goes to the paper, because when people think of TLT, I think they actually think of community development because that's where it all goes. And so what we talked about today is if we start getting phone calls, refer them to the commissioner's office, let them know, yes, this is a commissioner-led effort, here's their phone number, etc. So my staff are prepared for that if and when it starts.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's the important part, is that it doesn't end up being your staff suddenly carrying a TLT initiative on our.
Yep.
And in the letter, I will include these hearing times that are
Oh,
on
Mary
here.
Faith, your mic is off for anybody who's online.
In the letter, I will include these hearing times. So we're assuming it'll be the 29th and the 12th. So that people who are receiving the letter will also know when the hearings are. And,
And I think I forgot to update this. I'll check with Isabel and give you the times. I think it got moved up to 10 a.m.
okay,
But yes, I'll check that out.
okay,
Yes, leaving today, these are the times that we're gonna start noticing.
good. And then, after the hearings, Sarah and I have a plan for visiting CACs and continuing the outreach, assuming we move forward after the hearings, continuing the outreach.
Yep.
Without violating our, whatchamacallit?
Your
Ex parte contact. So, so we have a post-hearings plan, and Doug has volunteered to participate in a PAC, and so at some point at his convenience, I want to get together with him and just get his ideas on that. I just want to hear what he proposes, because he's certainly successful with PACs. Paul has ideas, strong ideas about the 70%. So I would love for Paul to be involved as much as he wants to be, and I think that his ideas for the 70% will be of particular interest to this group. So, so I'd love it if you can,
Absolutely.
yeah, be involved. So, yeah, what else do we want to talk about?
That answers all my questions. Do you have any other outstanding?
My only question, and I realize this would throw a huge hiccup in all sorts of things, but I'll just, I'm not tied to it, I'm just throwing it out. When we've had topics that we think may be hot topics in the community, we've tried to have an evening hearing for at least one of the hearings. These are both during our regular Wednesday board meeting. Are we feeling like maybe that's not as necessary because we are doing the stakeholder hearings outside of that, or do we want to try to hold at least one evening hearing, because this is kind of it's a very impactful and large topic. So just a thought. And again, I know that throws a lot of wrenches into everything we do.
No, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, it's not hard to do. I don't know if I would have those dates for the letter going out tomorrow, maybe. So that's the only potential, because we would still want, I mean, what I would try to do is have it on the evening of the 29th to stay with the 2 weeks, you know, in line for the board's adoption. And I wouldn't have the 12th, because that's, you need to be in a board meeting adopting it at that point, ideally. So I would be looking at the evening of the 29th.
Is there a certain number of hearings, like we're only allowed to have two, or there's a reason we have two? There is,
You can have more if you want.
okay.
Minimum, you need a minimum of 2 weeks apart.
Okay.
Always start running into problems in terms of getting ballots put together.
Right, I was just thinking on the 29th, if you needed to do one at the regular board meeting, then instead of having a
Oh,
board
add
briefing
one?
that day, you could have, just don't have the board briefing that day and add an evening, a second hearing on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And at least that way it's offered up and people can,
Oh, so you're saying, I'm sorry, I missed it, on the 29th?
well, she was talking about putting that one on in the evening, but I was just wondering if
We'd have
adding
3.
is,
Mhm.
yeah, that would give us 3 hearings. I
Mhm.
think that's even, since we're
Better.
compressing our
Mhm.
time frame, they can't say we didn't try to get the word out.
Right, so it would be the morning, the 29th, the evening, the 29th, and then back to the board meeting on the 12th for adoption.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Where would you have the evening? meeting?
Where?
Well, we can talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will try to firm up that evening date
Okay,
as soon as possible, so we can put it in
Great.
there.
great.
Otherwise, we probably want to just stick, so I guess regardless of the evening, having the 2 10 a.m. meetings, you can put in the letter.
Good.
Right,
And
yeah,
if there's an
that
additional
makes
one,
sense.
so that's all that.
Yeah, but if we want to do it at the Port of Tillamook Bay and Sarah can call them today, maybe we'll know
Mhm.
right away.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Or even if by the time we get to the meetings next week, we'll know, we could share at the meeting, we added a
Oh, true.
additional
Mhm.
hearing
Right, we got it.
that evening, and we could send that out in that email blast too,
Okay, good. Yep, no,
Yeah.
that's good. Thank you.
just to not delay the letter.
Right, yeah, because we want to make sure we get that out the door as quickly as we can.
Okay,
Great.
We all know who's doing what?
yeah, thank you.
Okay, does that take care of everything we had for TLT?
I believe so.
Okay, with that in mind, we'll move on to our next topic, which is the CAO salary update. We had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago before we started the holidays to get a presentation from Troop on their CAO salary assessment, and then the opportunity for all of us to kind of think about that a little bit. And I think we're bringing it back at this point to just further discuss that and see if we are ready to provide guidance to put that into a pay table and move that forward. Is that correct, Rachel?
Yeah, I've given, per prior conversations individually with you, given Treasurer Blanchard the guidance to create those pay tables so they're ready for the Friday agenda. This is your opportunity to start vocalizing your position and how you write that,
Perfect.
if you wanted to.
Sure, you bet, you bet. No, and I think this is a good one. I know this was, it's been a challenging one. Troop gave us 3 different options to think about, and one of them was at the sort of very low scale. One of them was at a very high scale that, you know, was really looking at the marketing outside, and then there was kind of a middle option. And I know, for me, just kind of sitting with it and thinking about how do we fit this into, and we talked about this a little bit, how do we fit this into the rest of the work that we're doing, and how do we, you know, not jump ahead of the work that we're doing, but still really recognize the major shift that we've made as a board and as an organization in bringing on central services and moving to the chief administrative officer model, really having us as commissioners look at big picture stuff, not day-to-day stuff. And, you know, today we're starting that work, which is exciting to me to have that conversation today and go, yeah, we can actually appropriately hand that to Rachel to work with Sarah on instead of all of us trying to problem solve here. But recognizing that we also need to move forward with the chief administrative officer pay tables and salary for Rachel. So I think that for me, looking at it and thinking about it, there's sort of a middle space in there that I think makes sense for us to place Rachel as we get started and to recognize that we do need to potentially invest a little bit to make this happen. That, you know, we can't make this kind of a change without having investment in personnel to lead it and make it happen. So, commissioners' thoughts on where we are on this?
I left my pay tables upstairs that I wanted to look at, so I'll let you two talk about it and I'll interject.
Oh, okay.
Because I do have opinions on this for sure.
I support where we landed as a result of meeting individually with Rachel and with Mike. I think it's a good starting place. My point has been that in doing the process of assessing the executive pay tables, it just became painfully clear that we need to look at those. We need to look at the executive pay tables for the whole organization and also the elected pay tables. And so I think there may be movement. What I want to reassure our leaders is that it's very clear to us that all of those tables need to be assessed. And so where I think we landed with placing the CAO position is in one range that may change later, but a lot of people may change their ranges later. And so this is a sort of a stepped process where we're starting, makes sense, and we may end up somewhere else. But in that second step, that will include all of our leaders. So I feel good about that.
And I like to add, and I've said this before, I feel like, and I've talked to some other executive staff, and one of the things I say is, just like we're talking about code enforcement, if we started a new position, we're gonna start fresh, and we're gonna have to start somewhere. And this is just beginning of that process of reevaluating with the classification and the wage study. So I just see this as, like you said, find the number that works to get us there, and it may change later as we get through with the evaluation process. But, so I agree with what you said about that. And I just, this is just, it's a new job, so we have to set on something.
Mhm.
We don't have a historical one to pick, so.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the work from Troop gave us some good stuff to think about. And we do, to your point, the executive pay tables overall have to be evaluated, just as all pay tables are being evaluated in this compensation study. So, we really are trying hard to get to a place where we really do understand what the work that people do is worth on the open market, because that's really what we're working with, right? What is our statutory counties? What are the other factors that are in here, and trying to get there? And we're not quite there yet, but this position is here now. And to your point, Commissioner Fournier, we can't wait. It's a new position. We have to acknowledge its existence, and we need to pay Rachel appropriately for that work. However, she's being paid appropriately inside our existing scales, really. So we know that this will probably change in the future. So, yes.
Chris has his hand up.
Chris, yes, please.
Yeah. My question is not so much about pay. It is what it is. My comment or question we have, it also applies towards the commissioners. We do the departments that are not general fund, we pay money is indirect cost to the general fund for services that, Rachel is going to be overseeing. In addition to that would also be the treasurer's department. It's obviously there should be a bump in that indirect cost. There's some discussions a while back about trying to simplify or remove some of the gray black box. How do we come up with an indirect cost? With that, my counterparts in other counties, the public works director is paid oftentimes by other departments. The road department receives money from solid waste for $30,000 to help them out with administrative services. So I don't really know how the commissioners are paid, but Sean raised her hand. It's as we start looking through the upcoming budget season and we look at that schedule, is evaluating where that money comes from to help support. I mean, Parks Department, we've got a lot of these departments that are no longer general fund. And if we're all using the services, the indirect cost, we all should be paying our fair share of that. So probably not the question you thought I was going to say, but
No, thanks.
There it is.
I appreciate you bringing it up, and I think it is definitely something that we'll be looking at systemically. And Sean, do you want to address that? I see you've got your hands up. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, so we've got a new software system that we're going to be working with that I'm hoping is going to clear up that black box that, I can tell you takes into account the number of items you bring before the board, the number of payroll checks, all that information based on actuals in BOC, treasurer budget, HR budget. So we're working on that so that we have a better, clear answer as to how and why that number is come up with in the indirect cost.
Thank you. I really appreciate what Chris just said, how I interpreted what Chris just said. You feel free to let me know, Chris, if I got this right. That the departments there should be a new allocation to the general fund for the CAO who is doing work for all of the departments. So I hadn't thought about that before, and that's an excellent point.
Yeah, additionally, looking at the indirect cost allocation and trying to think outside the box and making sure it does capture everything that it should, that maybe it currently is not, is part of the Tiberius work that's forthcoming. So I see a couple of phases to this. We haven't gotten too far into the weeds, Sean and I, about it, but the first step is getting the new software. So that's going to be rolling out. I think she wants to roll that out and start implementing it. If time allows, with the consultant for this fiscal year, for the budgeting process this coming fiscal year. And then, but the central services and some of these tweaks of who's doing what and changing processes, that's a longer term process. So I see over time, additional tweaks being made to the indirect cost allocations as we better understand how central services is supporting the other departments. And so it's going to evolve like a lot of this is, but I think there's going to be some very short-term changes and clarity that's on the near future.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that because I feel like just in other places I've worked and the way central services has been done, all departments pay into central services. It's not like general fund departments don't. It's just, it'll be a shifting. It would be sort of a slice of the pie of what they already get that they would get, but then it would be reflective of, of where they're engaging in central services, just as special revenue funds are engaging in central services. So it's, one potential, certainly not that we will definitely go that way, but one that I've seen in other agencies is it's just everybody's playing in the same pool in that way for central services. And that is how you determine how much you can, how much HR and IS and commissioner time and all of that stuff. It's all in that bucket. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting and enlightening process, I think, for all of us to figure out how to slice this pie up in the best possible way and the most equitable and fair way. So Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, you nailed what my comment was. The road department is currently paying $303,000 to our indirect cost to the general fund, and that was a significant increase from the previous years. I think that the commissioners is probably already wrapped into the black box of the indirect cost, but as we go moving forward into the commissioner compensation, which is always a discussion, is that it's either wrapped in the indirect cost or, I set aside 10, 20,000, $2, preferable, to pay for, offset some of that general fund, whether it's indirect cost or whatever that is. But it's a significant impact to the road department budget with $303,000. And we're obviously one of the larger, with personnel and HR issues, paychecks, et cetera. We're one of the larger non-general fund departments. So that is a big chunk of our fund, our budget.
Thank you. I could spend a lot of time talking about because I'm a numbers person. I find it interesting, but that isn't what we're here to do. So I will not take us down that bunny trail.
That is, before we move on though, that's another excellent point, Chris. I had not thought about whether or not commissioner time, and particularly our liaison time, is paid through indirect cost allocations. So another excellent point. Thank you.
Yeah, because I don't think we factor it that way currently, as an example. I don't think that we do, but we don't all know for sure because there's a black box.
For sure we
I
don't.
think it is in part, like how many agenda items come before you for a meeting, but probably not the liaison work, which should be. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that we need to talk about on the CAO topic? I think we have the pay tables coming before us, and we will go ahead and take care of that business at that time.
Yep, and you'll also have the OPSER pay tables next
Thank
week.
you.
So there's a bunch next week for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That's it for our topic list. Are there other commissioner updates today that we'd like to chat about?
Well, for me, I got to go finish my letter.
Okay.
Good.
You're good?
You good for today?
Okay, I will just. No, Doug always came with a list. I don't know if he did on his first one. I'll give you credit.
No, I appreciate Chris's comments. I think one of the things we're gonna learn through this process is we have to change the thinking of the way the county has been running. Like, the central services thing isn't just this.
Mm-mm.
It's literally, and I use this equation, like when I joked with Dan, don't get mad, Dan, if he's watching, about I want more of his money. But the fact is, and I'll do a little Dougism, a car manufacturer makes its money when it sells a car. But that money also has to go back to the R&D and the design of the car. And there's no way for that department to make any money to fund its own operation. So I think I look at the county as being, whether it's special funded or not, it's part of the machine. And sometimes the departments that can make the revenue are going to have to share the revenue because other departments have no way of doing it. So I hope that we get to the point where we look at this as one big company that helps each other out in different areas that need it. For instance, we're not paid directly now, but we go as liaisons that help them. So I just feel like, every other private business works that way. drug manufacturers, they have their R&D, doesn't make any money, but cost all the money. But then they make it when they sell it. So I just think part of this is us changing the culture of the business and the thinking of the business. And I think in the end, it's gonna work much smoother and more efficiently. Anyway, that's my comment on this.
Okay, thank you. So, wow, okay, we're gonna be like the fastest board briefing in history or pretty close. In the term, I will touch briefly in terms of the wrapping up of the changing of the retirement plan. We will be adopting the obsolete pay tables. We have officially closed the plan. I have met with Matt, or talked with Matt Larrabee from our actuarial, and connected him with Rachel to get a board briefing upcoming to just look at the closed plan specifically, so that we can understand, now that we've closed it, what is the trajectory on it? How will that cost happen? How will, that pay out over time, and the whole thing. So we'll have that opportunity to visit with him and kind of wrap our head around the closed piece of the plan while we are learning about and rolling into the new plan as well. So hopefully by the end of January, we'll have that opportunity for our actuary to come and present. Great. Yeah. Rachel, anything while you have us here? I know this is a tough thing to get all three of us together.
Yeah, I think I gave all my updates, noteworthy ones, at the board, at the leadership team. But I plan to do that type of thing at these board briefings as we go along throughout the month. So just all these different things, if there's any noteworthy updates, trying to do less individual updates as we go on, just to be more efficient. And so,
Okay.
no, nothing new since Monday.
Nothing new since Monday. Okay, Bill, anything for you since you're with us today? No, you're good. Online, anyone who has anything that they would like to share with the board?
No.
Mike's shaking his head. Mike, is there anything you'd like to share? You've got all three of us in the same room in a public meeting.
Like you said, it was a record for efficiency. Pat yourself on the back.
We just saved how much money?
Right?
money did
Right.
you save,
Well, let's
Michael?
see. What are we each hourly? All right. Okay. Well, then if there is nothing else to come before the board today, we will adjourn this board briefing at 2:57. Thank you, everyone.
Good work, team.
Thanks. Okay. I took my chair back.
Did you really?
You couldn't get mine to get any taller, could you? So I'm just going to stay this short.
It's totally different. And
See, look at those two. I want the taller of the two. That's short, Rachel. Don't give me that one.
I need the recliner one.
Well, this one. You want a reclining one? Because this one rocks. This one rocks a lot.
And then I realized this one has my name on it, and then I felt totally yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. I saw
Can't
that
tell
child for 4 years.
Feels